Influencers are wrong about Bali, and that can sadly influence your trip coming here. So today I'm gonna talk about exactly how and why that is, and what you should do to have a fantastic trip to Bali. So influencers are wrong about Bali in a few different ways. And the first is perhaps also the most obvious one, that they're kind of over-portraying the beauty. And this is not something that's unique to Bali, this happens everywhere. Influencers will take a gorgeous photo, really enhance the colors and pump up the saturation, perhaps remove all other people from the photo in Photoshop, maybe remove all the trash from the beach. And of course it helps if you have a girl in a bikini as well. And I mean, this in itself is not really a bad thing. I mean, people can do whatever they want to do. But I guess the problem arises when you want to plan your trip. Because these photos are so beautiful, you know, they might get a lot of exposure and a lot of likes on social media. So they're also the ones that you are likely to see when you are doing research on your destination. So when you finally go to these places, you realize that they don't actually look like they do in the photos, and perhaps you get a little bit disappointed. Of course, some of the blame is also on you, because just don't trust people on social media. And this here is actually a pretty good example. So I've come out to this beautiful black sand beach here, but you won't really often see on social media what it actually looks like. So there's just a lot of trash everywhere. Up here it looks like people, you know, come camping and just watch the sunset, drink some beers and just leave all the trash. And on the beach it's just a lot of washed up debris and also trash. And I'll even show you a picture that I took of my girlfriend Sally on a pretty similar black sand beach, where I basically just removed all the trash from the image, as it just distracts from the actual image that I want you to see. But if you then decide to go to this beach, there will be a lot of trash. And I feel like I can quite confidently talk about this, as I have in total traveled around Bali for around a year. And at the same time, I've also been a bit on the, I guess, the influencer side of things, posting a lot of stuff from Bali and generally just following a lot of people who are also influencers and are traveling in Bali. So another thing that influencers do, and well, to be honest, this is something that I used to do a lot and still do sometimes, is to wake up extremely early for sunrise to get to a location super early, because at this time the light is just beautiful, so the pictures will just be a little bit nicer looking, and at the same time there's almost no other people. And like, I've had some amazing experiences doing just this, going to some beautiful locations for sunrise and just being completely alone in a very gorgeous spot. Like right now, I'm on my way to a waterfall actually. And here there's just a very nice little temple on the way. I'm sure we can already hear the waterfall, which should be just down here. But really, I do this because I enjoy it. I enjoy taking pictures, and like, I just enjoy the whole process, and I don't mind waking up early once in a while. But I mean, if you are here on vacation, you're probably not gonna be waking up at 5 a.m. every day just to be alone at a waterfall. You'll probably go a little bit later during the day, or you might go with a tour guide. And I mean, then you'll just be at the waterfall the exact same time as everyone else. And again, this is nothing that's exclusive to Bali, really. Popular tourist destinations all over the world get completely crowded. But the difference perhaps is that if you go to these places in Bali and you expect them to be, I guess, at least half empty, then you're in for a bit of surprise. Because if that's what you have seen on social media. Now, I'll be honest, I did not go to this waterfall here for sunrise. Instead, I found one that's not really, I guess, popular or very well known. So now it's like 2 p.m. and I am the only one here. But then there is also the other side of that, because since this is not really a tourist destination, you know, there's no one collecting money for me to enter. It's all free here. But that also means that there's no one really who takes care of this place. So it is full of trash everywhere. Especially a bit downstream here, it's just crazy. It's really trash everywhere, even up in the bamboo trees. And I mean, it's not the most beautiful waterfall I have ever seen here in Bali. But again, the really beautiful ones are often very crowded during the day. So you can have some great experiences coming to these places that are just, well, less known, I guess. And it is pretty cool. It's like a double waterfall. So if we can look past all the trash here, it's really not too bad.
But this also leads me to the next thing, that traveling Bali has just become an Instagram tour. Like, literally. You go to these websites where you would book tours to explore a country or a city, but in Bali the top tours with something like 4,000 or 5,000 reviews are called something along the lines of Bali Instagram Tour. I mean, what? People who aren't influencers and who don't make any money doing this fly all the way to Bali only to pay even more money to be driven around in a car all day, stopping at these places to take the exact same photo as everyone else because some famous influencer did it once. And again, people can do what they want, but
I don't think I can attribute this one only to influencers, but people in Bali also tend to stay in the very same small areas. Again, this is probably very similar all around the world in the touristy places. But in Bali, most people tend to stay around Canggu, Kuta, Seminyak. But these places, in my opinion, has just become so westernized that it feels more like Australia or even Europe there. It doesn't really feel like Bali to me. And I mean, sure, there are loads of great restaurants and beach clubs and cafes, and they're all very beautiful and Instagrammable, and you can have a lot of fun, and going out is also great, but it's just weird, like it's so westernized. And in my opinion, it doesn't really have that Bali magic anymore. But because these areas have become so popular with tourists, prices for everything, especially accommodations, have also gone up a lot. And I mean, it makes sense, there's high demand, so the prices go up. And this right here leads to the next wave of influencers who are wrong.
And these I call the negative influencers. In a nutshell, they hated their stay in Bali. They say it's overrated, overcrowded. They were stuck in traffic all day and everything they bought is priced like back home in their Western home country. And they're wrong. But why did they have this experience then? Because they followed the first influencers. So these negative influencers spent all their time staying in Canggu or Kuta or Seminyak and paid hundreds of dollars to stay in that trendy, popular Airbnb. They went down to the beach and it was full of trash and the water was brown. They only ate at the trendy, Instagrammable restaurants and cafes where the food prices is like 10 times the Bali average. And they visited that one popular waterfall right at noon, just the same as everyone else, and then complained that there are too many other tourists. But it's not just these negative influencers who have this experience. Regular tourists come here and fall into this exact trap.
So what can you do to avoid this? Well, first off, just don't spend all your time in Canggu, Seminyak, Kuta or even Ubud. Move around a little bit and go outside of the very touristy places to see more of Bali, basically. And I will have some recommendations for you in just a little bit. Now, I do like to actually stay in Canggu for a few days when I arrive from the airport, as it is actually a pretty good area to get settled and maybe beat jet lag and just have a good meal, get a SIM card, rent a scooter. It's a pretty good place to, start your trip. But even then, I'd recommend looking at places just outside of like Canggu or the other popular areas. For example, right now I'm staying in a place called Sese, which is just a 10-minute drive from Canggu, but it's just so much more quiet, loads of rice fields, you don't see tourists like everywhere, and it has a lot more of a local feel. Or even in Canggu, you could just look a little bit more inland. I mean, a few weeks ago, I stayed in this $15 hotel in Canggu, and it was a pretty good deal. The Canggu area can also be pretty great if you're staying perhaps longer term, so a few weeks, a few months, or even longer. Because there is just everything you need to have a comfortable stay, good Wi-Fi, loads of restaurants, and a lot of other digital nomad type of people. And I mean, it is a pretty good place to have a kind of a base and where you can then go explore from. But also don't go to Canggu and expect incredible beaches. The beaches here are great for surfing, they're great for just chilling out with a beer and watching the sunset. But if you want those beautiful beaches and go swimming in turquoise water, you need to go down to Uluwatu or perhaps even take a boat out to Nusa Lembongan or even the Gili Islands. I do have a huge Bali guide where I go a bit more in depth with each of these locations, but here are some great places you could consider visiting. So first off is Ahmed in East Bali. Here you just have great snorkeling and diving, and it's very laid back and not full of tourists at all. But it's still a little bit touristy, mainly because of the diving that I mentioned, so it is kind of built up and there are some nice hotels and restaurants there. Then there's Cinnamon, which is probably one of the most gorgeous areas in Bali. You'll get some incredible views and this will really feel like the proper local countryside in Bali. And you have Munduk and in general the north of Bali. So the villages up in the north, up in the mountains in Bali are just beautiful. And there seems to be an endless amount of waterfalls here. Or you could even go all the way up north to the beach towards like Lovina, where you can find some nice hotels and decent infrastructure, but still very, very untouched by other tourists. And there is Ubud, and Ubud is very touristy. But if you stay more on the outskirts of Ubud, you can have a much better experience and really get a local Bali feeling. And do consider subscribing if you want more recommendations of where to go that are just off the beaten path. I'm just about to go on a huge road trip across Bali where I just want to try and experience, get some more real and rural and off the beaten path Bali. Okay, so we have covered the accommodation part of Bali, which these influencers who are wrong say is very expensive.
The other part is food, and it's actually really simple. Eat local food at local restaurants. If you want to save money, skip the foreign restaurants and find a local warung and eat some Indonesian food. It's both fantastic and affordable. I often spend less than $5 per day on food simply by eating mostly local. But if you do want a burger or a smoothie bowl now and again, there are actually quite a few restaurants out there that serve Western food that are also really affordable. One of my favorites is called Kopi Kota.
But the food is really great. They have a lot of more Western food, but also some traditional Indonesian food. They have great coffee here and the prices are really great, especially for Western food. The prices are amazing.
Not everyone will love Bali, but if you avoid listening to these influencers who are wrong, your chances of falling in love with this island are greatly increased. And if you are coming to Bali, you should watch this video right here, which is my huge Bali travel guide that goes into a lot more detail in many of these points, especially on where to stay and what to see and what to do.